The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. In the city of Capernaum on the Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes. And immediately there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out of him." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, came out of him. And they were all amazed, so that they were questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? A new teaching? With authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once his fame spread everywhere throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Dear brothers and sisters, among the functions and duties that God assigned to the Church is one of prophetism. Prophetism is a gift granted to the Church with two other ones, priesthood and kingship. The function or mission of prophet is in the Old Testament. It was to speak on behalf of God, as we read in the first reading. The task of the prophets was to sanctify the people of God, who had to be holy, like the priests. And they had also to speak on behalf of God himself. And the main duty of the king was to lead the people of Israel, the people of God, to lead it according to God's will. This meant that the king was to be faithful to the will of God and to know it surely. He had to be a man of God, but sometimes priests and kings failed to accomplish the will of God in the middle of his people. That's why God himself instituted the order of prophets. That was in the history of the people of God. And these prophets, they were men who are rooted in God, who know well God and his plans of salvation for his people and for the whole humanity. They were people who follow the word of God and meditate it. With these conditions, they were able to discern the will and plans of God for his people. They also can predict the future of men and women in the line of God's promise. These are prophets. A prophet is like a watchman. He's like a watchman for the society. He is to observe the society and denounce the evil from it. He must proclaim the word of God and the word from God, not his own word. He had to show the true way of reconciliation between God and his people. A prophet is an elder who teaches the people the wisdom of God. A prophet is someone who announces the word of God, who renounces some advantages and denounces the evil. In the first reading, we saw Moses, who was considered as a prophet. That time he was old. He was almost at the end of his life. And the people of God that he led from Egypt was scared. How to live without a prophet? How to know the will of God if we have no prophet like Moses? However, Moses reassures them that God himself will give them another prophet. He did in these words, "I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him." So here, understand what Moses did and what is the role of every prophet among the people of God. Dear brothers and sisters, from our baptism, God made us prophets. This means we have been granted the mission of teaching the Word of God, to speak on behalf of God, and to show our brothers and sisters the way of salvation, the way towards God. This mission was granted also to the church, as to every Christian. But my question is, do we accomplish it correctly? Generally, the church fulfills her prophetic mission when she tries to enlighten the society. We know that most of the time, the church denounces the evil and all the deviation followed by the society, ignoring the will of God. But we know also that most of the time, the voice of church is not heard, because this word wants only his own will to be done, though it goes to its lost. The church, through the responsibles of the church, the popes, the bishops, and the others, most of time speaks and their words are not heard. Their words are considered like nonsense because of some interest, some other interest, political ones, economical ones, or some interest of some particular groups. And most of time, the world wants to realize its own projects, its own plans, which don't correspond to the will of God. Moreover, you would see that lots of false prophets are plenty in our cities, in our streets, in our homes, and so on. And those prophets, they prophesy death to those who try to seek God, and promise wealth, long life, children, husbands, jobs, wives, and so on. And unfortunately, prophets are widely heard. They are considered in the society and followed by many people more than those who should follow those true prophets who really preach the word of God. Brethren, there are some conditions to distinguish a true prophet. First of all, a true prophet must be a man of God, a man who has his roots in God, his roots in the Word of God, the one who ordinarily lives and accomplishes the commandments of God, who is a model of the society. Secondly, his teachings, what he prophesies, must correspond to the will of God, must correspond to the plans of the salvation of God to his people, not those who promise mounts and marvels only and want only to show some miracles, and they think that is enough to be a prophet. No. Finally, a true prophet must be distinguished through the quality of his life. He must be a seeker of God and a friend of God. Our society today, dear brothers and sisters, needs those true prophets, and we are ones to accomplish that mission, because from our baptism, as we are saying, we are made prophets of God. Jesus Christ is our model, and he gives us an example in today's gospel. In him was fulfilled the promise of a prophet risen from the people. He was awaited as a Messiah to deliver his people. When they were thinking about a Messiah delivering them from the Roman imperialism, he starts by delivering them from the slavery of the evil. We are told in this gospel that in the synagogue there was a man with an unclean spirit, which means those kind of unclean spirits were everywhere, even in the synagogue. That is astonishing. It's surprising. These spirits are terrible when they don't fear the holy places like the synagogue or the temple, where God is supposed to be present, fully present. It means these unclean spirits were used to be there despite the spiritual rites and their rabbis and scribes' teachings. Why these spirits were not scared from the presence of the scribes' authority? It is because these scribes were only followers of their only tradition, and their teachings were just a repetition from what they had heard from their masters, from the tradition. It means they were not convinced by what they were teaching. So even their teachings were not convincing. That's why people were saying, no, it is not normal. He has a special teaching. Jesus' teaching was special, was a new one, because Jesus was sharing his own experience of God, his own life as a son of God. That's why his teachings had a certain authority, and people were amazed when Jesus chased that unclean spirit. In fact, Jesus' teaching was not a repetition. It was coming from his own conviction and also from his own faith. Our word or your word cannot have authority if we have never met God himself, if we have never met Jesus Christ in reality. We must make our experience of God to make him our friend and our companion. In that case, we'll have authority also to fight the evil. If Jesus Christ liberated that man from the power of the devil, we are also called as Christians, as disciples of Jesus Christ, to fight the evil with all our energy. Dear brethren, the evil today has a new face, has some new masks. Every kind of disorder, conflicts, wars, murders and assassinations, divisions and exclusions, abortion, divorce, theft, hatred, corruption, lack of pardon and reconciliation, and so on. These are elements of the evil kingdom which fight the God's kingdom. Sometimes they seem to have a victory, but with Jesus, let us be sure that with Jesus' power, they cannot win. It is not possible. Where Jesus is fought, there are evil spirits. Where the word of God is not respected, there the unclean spirits are present. and they are the ones to prevent harmony, love, reconciliation, and peace among the children of God. Brethren, if we want to be the true disciples of Jesus Christ, let us learn from him. Let us abandon our bad deeds which link us to the devil. Let us make a real experience of God by giving him all our hearts and all our minds. Let us increase in faith, in hope, and in love. We should let God lead us in all the steps of our own life. Let us be possessed totally by God only. In that case, he will make us his prophets, and we will have the power also and the authority to speak and act on behalf of God. The Lord be with you.